Welcome. This is James Corbett of CorbettReport.com.
And this is James Evan Pilato of MediaMonarchy.com, and we welcome you back to The New World Next Week. You can find everything you need, sources, audio, video, and so much more at NewWorldNextWeek.com. James, it is just turning into Thanksgiving here in the States, and I thought it would be appropriate if we essentially focused this episode on food issues, whether that be geopolitical food issues or health issues or economic issues. All of those things we'll cover in this episode. But we will begin with a story from your backyard and posted to my own foodworldorder.com. Japan dismantles rice subsidies. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's government has approved a plan to end a 4-decade-long policy that has helped to sustain the nation's 1.2 million rice farms. The Gentan system, which has paid landowners to reduce crops since 1970, will be dismantled by the end of the fiscal year through March 31st, 2019, the agriculture minister told reporters in Tokyo this past Tuesday. The change may spur consolidation of small paddies into larger fields as Abe seeks to increase agricultural efficiency and remove hurdles to his pursuit of free trade pacts, including the Trans-Pacific Partnership. The subsidies support a typical Japanese farmer who's a 70-year-old man living off pension payments, part-time work, and sales of the grain, data from the Norinchukin Research Institute shows. And the article goes on to note that manufacturers from Toshiba to Toyota would benefit from Abe's push to reach a TPP agreement. Now, James, one of the interesting things, one of the comments notes on the original source of this story out of Australia, theland.com.au, pointing to how the headline can be misleading, dismantling the rice subsidies, by noting the tariffs on imported rice are staying at 778%. So they're making possibly minor changes to the food imports, but the massive farm assistance may remain. James?
Well, in a manner of speaking, but I think we're going to see those tariffs demolished if and when the TPP goes through. I don't think that's going to survive if the TPP really goes ahead. So I think this is just the first part of dismantling the Japanese farm subsidies in order to be in line with this new international economic order that they're trying to bring in. And the really sad part about this is if you look at the statistics, you mentioned it there, the average age of the rice farmer, 70 years old. The 72% of Japanese rice farmers work on 1 hectare or less, and 42% on half of that. These are small family rice paddies, basically. And from my own experience, pretty much every family that I know here has a family rice paddy, and then a couple of times a year they'll go out for the harvest, and they'll harvest it out the rice, and usually there's some other vegetables and things. That is one of the things that I love about Japanese society, is that it still really does have that kind of grow your own food philosophy to a certain extent. I mean, obviously people still shop at supermarkets and the like, but there is pretty much every family does have that, and that is what is now being dismantled in the wake of these free trade agreements to make way for big agri to basically conglomerate and take over, which is a sad thing, because for a country that is so completely dependent on imports for pretty much everything, from energy to food to everything else you can think of. One of the things that I've always liked about it is if the doo-doo really hit the oscillator, at the very least, everyone does have that family rice paddy and does have access to their own food that they do grow themselves. And that's one of the great things. But, I mean, we can lament about the geopolitics of this and the economics of this, but really this is a demographic thing. And it is. The average age is now 70 years old. This is an aging population that is going to start becoming a dying population within the next few decades as the population continues to age, and the young people are still moving into the cities and are not taking over the old rice paddies. So it is going to go the way of the dodo, just demographically speaking, let alone economically or geopolitically. And I don't know if there's any solution to that other than to hopefully to reconvince the younger generation of the importance of growing your own food.
James, other news related, also posted to foodworldorder.com. Monsanto, the Trans-Pacific Partnership and global food dominance, noting, of course, the Obama administration working feverishly with transnational corporations to fast-track the TPP. I know you've already done work on that as well, our good friend Brock at AP Perspective. And it's essentially been called NAFTA on steroids, or a global corporate coup. So having said that, James, we'll move to our second story this week. A little more lighter, I suppose, but a story originally I reported on Food World Order over just about a month ago. And so I'll get you the backstory first and the update second. California City sues Sriracha factory over stench. And this came from the BBC. A California city sued the makers of Sriracha hot sauce, saying the factory's smell makes the area uninhabitable. The city of Irwindale, California, asked a judge to prevent Hoi Fong Foods from making the spicy condiment until the factory submits plans to reduce the smell. Hoi Fong representatives have said they are actually trying to fix the problem and have received no citations. Sriracha sauce is sold around the world, and there was even a recent Sriracha festival in Los Angeles. The update now, James, this week: Sriracha Shutdown. Factory ordered to suspend production. The hot sauce factory getting a chilly reception in Southern California. A judge in LA County ordered the factory to suspend operations that local residents claims caused an overpowering odor. Irwindale claimed in a lawsuit that the stench was causing watery eyes, sore throats, headaches, prompting complaints from dozens and dozens of residents. You couldn't stay outside in some places. Irwindale City Manager John Davidson said, "We've had softball teams that have had to cancel their games and practices because their eyes were watering." The judge's ruling orders Hoi Fong to cease any operations contributing to the nuisance-causing odor. The city has been pushing them to install a new filtration system to address the issue. James, I just find this one of those kind of fascinating and kind of sad and amusing kind of stories that the factory production of foods, and we're not even talking about the mega farms with mammals and living things. We're just talking about some funky hot sauce that has essentially ruined a town, James.
It is a bizarre story, and it raises in my mind the question of whether or not this is there's a precedent for this. I don't know. Has there ever been a town that has sued a factory for smells before? Do you know off the top of your head if there's anything like that?
Surely, and probably even back in my home state of West Virginia, there's a lot of. But I think you mean a food factory. So yeah. I don't think there's been a kind of food situation.
It's interesting, yeah. I mean, it's an interesting thing, and it brings to my mind, I used to teach at elementary school out in the middle of nowhere here in rural Japan that was right next to some sort of food factory. I don't even know what it was exactly, but the smell it produced was just tremendous. It was just unbearable sometimes, and I noticed that a lot of the children that went to that school had weird kind of skin problems, so I'm sure there was some sort of link there, and in fact, they had a lot of behavioral problems as well. So I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me if there was some kind of link to that. So I think ultimately the real solution at the end of the day is going to be us stopping buying the crap that's made in factories like that, rather than government regulation. But in the meantime, I think we should do something to get rid of the stench.
And I've got one for you as the possible alternative, James, in a way, because you guys know I used to work at a local grocery store here in the Portland area called New Seasons Market. We sold the hell out of Sriracha, but we also really sold the hell out of a local hot sauce called Secret Aardvark. So I'll include a link about the Made in Portland Habanero hot sauce that even there's a Reddit thread about. I see your Sriracha and raise you Secret Aardvark. So, James, having said that, I think in a way that sets us up for our third and final story on this Thanksgiving-themed episode of New World Next Week that speaks to the businesses and your local businesses and where you put your money and where you put your intentions. One of the bigger stories that caught a lot of fire, James, over the last 24 hours here in the States, and even reaching that point that, again, I cite and have cited time and time again in the past on Media Monarchy, using Google News as that arbiter of what's the mainstream sort of thought process and zeitgeist going on right now. This story reached the top of Google News at some point today. Indiana Pizza Hut manager fired after refusing to open on Thanksgiving, and this comes from CNBC. So that shows you, again, that this is more of an economic thing being reported on the financial networks more. As more restaurants open on Thanksgiving to boost sales, one Pizza Hut manager decided that he'd had enough, and it cost him his job. After working his way up from cook to general manager at the company, Tony Rohr was fired, he said, for refusing to open his Elkhart, Indiana store on Thanksgiving, which he was told was mandatory. I just decided I wasn't going to agree to do it. All these people the whole year had been told they were going to have the day off. He said that in his 10 years with the company, this was the first time any location has asked him to work on Thanksgiving. Many spots are opening on the national holiday in an effort to squeeze out extra sales from holiday shoppers. They said it was just a competitive decision and that everyone was open, so we will be too. I said, why can't we be the company that stands up and says we care about our employees and let them have the day off? He said he has not been in touch with the chain since his termination, but Pizza Hut posted this statement to their Facebook page Wednesday saying, quote, "This was clearly an unfortunate situation and we are upset by what has transpired in Elkhart, Indiana. While the choice as to whether a restaurant should be open or closed on a holiday is handled at the local level by our independent franchisees, we feel strongly that this situation could have been avoided. We respect an employee's decision not to work on a holiday if they so choose, which is why the vast majority of Pizza Huts in America are closed on Thanksgiving. The stores that are open to service their local communities are staffed by team members with the willingness to work on this day as determined by their own personal situations. We will monitor and evaluate this situation closely and regret what has occurred," end quote. Despite being laid off, James, right before the holiday season, Tony Rohr has no regrets. He said, quote, "No, not at all, and I'm glad that I did that," end quote. James.
Well, if a tree falls in the forest and it doesn't make a sound, does it make a sound? And if one person rages against the incessant commercialization of the holiday shopping season, does it make a difference? I would certainly hope so, but well, I guess that remains to be seen. And unfortunately, the general trend is to remain open longer and to work longer hours and to just basically work through the holidays because it's a potential sales opportunity as Black Friday becomes Blacker Thursday and the stores start opening earlier and earlier. Just ridiculous. Well, I'm glad that we kind of avoid that commercialization to that extent here in Japan, where Christmas is still a relatively confined holiday and not something that's really celebrated in the same way. But having said that, I must admit I don't quite understand this story because the way that I'm reading it, Pizza Hut America, the corporation, says that the choice as to whether a restaurant should be open or closed on holiday is handled at the local level by our independent franchisees. And the vast majority of them are closed on Thanksgiving. So this guy who was fired was a general manager. So I'm guessing that means that the franchise owner was trying to make him open this particular store, and he didn't want to. So he was fired from that independent franchise, which really has nothing to do with Pizza Hut, the corporation, widely speaking. So it's an interesting story, but very much confined to Elkhart, Indiana, I suppose. But again, it just speaks to, I think, the growing commercialization, not just of the holiday season, but just the fact that the Black Friday is becoming this kind of wider phenomenon, and they're trying to make, I guess, the riots start even earlier this year. So it's sad to see, but again, people vote with their dollars, and if you don't like the story, don't shop there on Thanksgiving.
You're exactly right, and I think that's why I really thought this was important to include in this episode because, James, yeah, this has really been, like I said, kind of the dominant theme that has grown and steadily grown and steadily grown as the years have gone by. And they actually, James, they don't call it Blacker Thursday. They've already got a name for it now. I just saw this today. Gray Thursday. It's this morphing of just smashing everything together, and you start to see the Christmas decorations ahead of time. And it's gotten to the point in America where it's almost Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas are just one big, massive consumer fest. And I think what this speaks to me is, again, they're trying to, what did the article say? In an effort to squeeze out extra sales. It's this cycle of trying to squeeze out extra sales for the people who work at these stores who have caused the economic and spiritual malaise that has led us to the point of having to work on holidays at crappy jobs that don't support your communities in the first place. It's all of these things, again, that I think, in a way, and I can even see this in my home state as I now start to wistfully think about the holidays and where I come from. Getting people to fight to the death for the very thing that enslaves them and destroy. No, don't take our coal away. It's just the very thing that's, destroying our state, but it keeps us alive. And that's the strange struggle that I think, James, this goofy story about Pizza Hut really speaks to. So we'll include Go ahead.
I just want to say you're exactly right about that, and it really is. It just speaks to the total malaise. That's the right word for this. That has inflicted society with this. And if only we could combine Valentine's and Mother's and Father's Day and Thanksgiving and Christmas into just one 365-day shopping season. Wouldn't that be beautiful?
I will include a couple of other interesting related notes, James, out on the Twitter feed, and I think they're worth noting and quickly reading into the record. On Thanksgiving, celebrating agriculture and not agribusiness, and thinking about all those food workers, from the 70-year-old family farmer to the folks who maybe work in the nasty Sriracha factory in California, to the folks who work at fast food jobs because they haven't kind of learn their way out of it. And I personally know some of those folks. I can empathize because I've been there in some of those levels and can only then sympathize on other levels. But the last thing I'll note, James, an interesting story that came out of Iowa: locally sourced Thanksgiving meal easy to gobble. And that's maybe the note I would just kind of end on, as my amazing partner, Cassie Cohen's been in the kitchen today, and we will be a little bit more tomorrow, and pretty much putting together a meal of nothing but locally sourced, in-season organic foods, and not going to the store and buying up a bunch of things. You're supposed to be thankful for the things that you have, not for the things that a corporation told you need to buy. So, James, my Thanksgiving rant is over.
Right on. Well, I'm with you there, in spirit, if not in person. So I hope you enjoy your Thanksgiving weekend with your girlfriend and your loved ones. And I will enjoy regular old Thursday here, as it's absolutely nothing special. So on that note, thank you again for putting these 3 stories together, and I'm looking forward to talking again next week.
Thanks so much, man. Take care.